Hi, and welcome to Literary Hype. I am Stephanie, your literary hype woman, and today's author conversation features my neighbor. Sort of. Soman Chainani just moved to St. Louis, kind of in the same neighborhood, so we met up at a local bookstore to talk about his newest release, The Fall of the School of Good and Evil, which is the end of the duology that is the prequel to The School for Good and Evil. A little complicated, but I promise you it makes sense, and so here's my conversation with Soman Chainani. The School for Good and Evil series is coming to an end with a prequel duology. How are you feeling putting this chapter behind you?
You know, I felt like the movie sort of coming at the end of all of it was this great big sort of cherry on top of the cake, and it couldn't have ended at a better time. I think that's also why I partially wrote the two prequels. I knew the movie was coming. I knew I wanted to keep exploring the world until the movie came out. And so this vision I always had of doing the prequels kind of accelerated forward. And I did them earlier than I would have expected to. But I really wanted them to coincide with the film. So it all worked out. I think I'm just happy that, you know, after all these years of writing the series, it's going to have an ending with sort of two different eras. So you get the full 6 books, and then you can go back a few hundred years and have a story about two brothers. So I just feel like you have different shades of the world in these two different series for sure. So I don't know. I just enjoyed exploring the world to its fullest.
So your newest book, which is the final part of the duology prequel, is The Fall of the School of Good and Evil. So kind of introduce us to what this story entails.
It's about the two brothers who run the school. You've got two identical twins as a schoolmaster, one who's pure good, one is pure evil. And as long as they rule the school together, they maintain their immortality, they maintain their infinite sorcerer powers, but they can't kill each other. That's kind of the deal. And as the first book, Rise of the School for Good and Evil, begins, one of the two brothers decides the other one has to die. And now we have really 2 books about a murder plot, and whether it succeeds or not. And ultimately we know from reading the series that 2 brothers goes down to 1 by the end of the prequel duology. So that's sort of the fun is, you know, readers know there's only going to be one that survives, but can I still fool them? Can I still pull the rug out from under them and have the classic plot twist of School for Good and Evil? And from reader reaction so far, everyone's been kind of shocked. So I think that's been the fun of it.
And so with this one, what can fans expect from the story as you wrap this all up?
I think it's a lot more action-packed and fast than the original School for Good and Evil series. The prequels are about half as long, and they're much more fueled by kind of male energy than the 6 books, which are more obviously dominated by 2 female characters. So I think the goal was to create a completely different tone and feeling so that you can enter the series through the prequels or through the 6 books.
Did you know when you first started it who you were going to have be the winner, or was this a kind of discover along the way?
I mean, yes and no. Yes, in the sense of readers know who ultimately the schoolmaster is if they've read the School for Good and Evil series, but I have all kinds of tricks up my sleeve that will make them read the original series in a different way. The
brothers, they kind of go back and forth between being good and evil. What is the message that you hope fans and readers take away from this?
I think the same as with the original 6 books, which is that you can't trust anybody as a hero or villain in this series. There's no easy answers. There's no likable character, unlikable characters. There's just constant shades of gray. And I think that's what makes it fun for everybody to read.
Your books use a lot of elements of other existing stories and fairy tales. What is the process like for you of deciding which ones would go in what story and which characters and how they would be used?
You know, it's very organic. It just comes like the young King Midas is in this story, and I've never really thought about it. One day it popped in my head of he would be a great character, and then he ended up sort of dominating a portion of the story. So for me, there's no planning. It just happens. I don't think, I'd love to include this or I'd love to include that. It just really is what fits in the given moment. You know, I sort of feel like I'm always driving in the dark. And eventually I look back and say, of course that makes sense. But at the time, I never really know what I'm doing.
Is there a fairy tale or character from an existing story that you wanted to use that just didn't fit?
I don't know, because the thing is, when I wrote Beast and Beauty, which is a book that I love from was my pandemic book, I used a lot of fairy tale characters there, and my editor felt quite strongly that I shouldn't repeat, because it just would be too confusing if I have one version of the characters in one book and a different version in another book. So I think a lot of them were taken off the table by that story.
What is it about fairy tales that you love so much that has kept you in this world for, 10 years or so?
I think it's that we all know the stories, but we grew up with the wrong versions often, because we grew up with the Disney versions, and I think there's always this surprise of what the stories really are. And so I saw an opportunity, I think, to bring us back to what fairy tales were meant to do, which is kind of be a survival guide to life and to educate us on good and evil for real. And I saw an opening, a lane that no other real series or book had, which was to take fairy tales back to the original.
Do you have a favorite character throughout this series?
Maybe Sophie. I feel like she is such a unique original character, and in a way that no one's ever been able to really compare her to anything, because she's so different and weird. So I felt like she was very uniquely me.
And you touched on the movie. It was number one in 80-something countries. What was that like for you to see it achieve that level of success? And what was the kind of response that you got from it?
I just think it's just this weird little winning the lottery miracle where you get to see your little story that you wrote come to life in such a grand, dramatic way. You never really expect it. You never have expectations for it, and you never take it for granted. So I learned to enjoy every moment. My goal was always that more readers would read the book. That's all I cared about. And so I think that was the result. You had a whole new generation of readers pick up The School for Good and Evil because of that movie.
So you got your start as a screenwriter. What was it like for you to see a book that you wrote then become a movie and that process of the screenwriting side of your story?
I mean, I was pretty involved in trying to give notes and help and things like that, but it's a big book. There's a lot of pieces to it. And so at the end of the day, you can only give as much input as you can, and then there's other people who have their input, and so you learn to let go. You learn that the books are going to outlive the movie, and that's just proven by history. The book is always going to last longer. So you learn not to take it too seriously. What the movie does well, what the movie does poorly, at the end of the day, the book is going to live on. So the hope is that it just brings new readers.
And you're very passionate about kids reading. Talk about how much that means to you for kids to read versus just watching something on a screen.
I think for me it's that kids these days, it's so easy not to read, and if you don't read, you give away your imagination to other creators, and you basically lose your ability to see a version of the story for yourselves. So I'm constantly in schools telling kids that if you want to be a creator one day, if you want to be the one who makes the content for other people to consume, you have to read. Otherwise, you don't have that version of the story inside of you that's yours. You're just going to be copying other people's versions. You're not going to trust your own creative instincts. And you only trust your own creative instincts by being able to imagine things for yourself and see things for yourself. And unfortunately, there's no shortcut to that except to read.
I mean, books are the best. Truly.
Yeah.
And you got to have a little cameo in the movie. Talk about that experience of kind of living out your imagination in a sort of way.
It was crazy because it was such big stars. I was surrounded by, Charlize Theron, Kerry Washington, Lawrence Fishburne, all at this kind of table for a whole day. Michelle Yeoh. And so you really are kind of in fantasy land, but at the same time, it's your world. So you also feel like if anybody here who has the right to be here, or not necessarily the right, but the knowledge and know-how of what this scene is, it's the author. So it is this mixed feeling of I don't belong here, and also I better be here. So it was a unique experience.
Do you have any fun stories from the set?
Only that it was just such a intense time, because it was the first movie to shoot for Netflix during COVID. And so I think we were all under a lot of pressure, and everyone was a little nervous. And so we had a good time, and I made a lot of friends with the stars and the actors and the young actors, but it felt very serious. It felt like there was a lot on the line because you didn't want the production to get shut down.
I hear you asked Charlize Theron a very fun question.
Yeah, I was asking Charlize about my favorite guilty pleasure movie, Showgirls, because I'd heard she was almost in it. And so that was my first question to her. I was like, is it true you were almost in Showgirls? And she's like, that girl stole my movie. And it was the icebreaker that sort of, got us to get along. And she was great to me. She was great to everybody. All of them were. They were all class acts.
When you release a book, you do real fun photo shoots. How do you come up with those ideas and tell me about that whole process?
I think for us, it's always there's a cool countdown to the book release. We want it to be fun and we want it to feel real. So we always find a way to make the book feel like a movie release. And then I'll always throw myself in on release day as kind of a troll to the readers. But there's no grand thought about what I'm going to do. It's always we come up with the concept of what's going to be the cool campaign, and then we slot myself in at the last second. But it really is about eventizing the release of the book.
Do you have a favorite look that you've sported for those photo shoots?
So many. I think there was one where I'm sort of like in the Riverdale world. I'm sort of like a teen being chased by a werewolf. And that one came out great. I think it's my profile photo on Instagram.
I do know that picture. It is great. With your audiobook for The Fall of School and Evil, you got to work with Kit. What was that process like?
Kit's such a good friend, and I think we're quite similar. We're almost in our own way like the good and evil twin, and share so much in common. And so I just love that he got to do these, and I just give him the books and say go, and I'd give him no direction and let him do his thing. But it's really out of love that he's doing it in both directions. I want him to do it, and he loves to do it for me and the School for Good and Evil fans.
And you have a famous friendship with Victoria Aveyard, who's one of my favorites of all time authors. You did Red School with. Do you have any more collaborations in the works?
I don't know, because we're both so busy with our stuff, and we tend to we're so happy being just like friends, and we have our own friendship that is often so different, apart from the writing world. We'd love to do something, but we'd have to see. That was just the perfect project at the time, also during the pandemic. So we'll see. I'm not sure. I would like to, but it depends.
How did that project even come about?
I think I'd been saying forever, we should just combine them and do something fun called Red School through Harper, our publisher. And then we pitched it to the publisher, and the publisher didn't want to do it. And when the publisher doesn't want to do something, then I have this vengeful need to prove that it's going to work. And so then it was supposed to be 16 pages, and it ended up being 96. A full 96-page, basically a full-length graphic novel. And then it was a question of, okay, well, is anyone going to buy this? And we sold out something like 22,000 copies in the first few hours. And so then it was like, and then we had to basically run a small business to get everything out, So it was an experience. I think ultimately it was not meant to make money, and I don't know if it even made money, but it was meant to be a gift to the fans. And Red School was just because we wanted to have fun during the pandemic, and we had a good idea. So it was, exceeded beyond our wildest dreams. And I don't know if we'll do anything else together, because that was such a perfect one-off opportunity, but you never know.
What's it like to have such good friends in the writing community?
We would have been friends anyway. We rarely talk about writing. We talk about everything else, but we just would have been friends. We would have been friends in high school. We would have been friends otherwise. So I think that's the key in the writing community, is just to make friends that are real and not fake, because those don't last. I think it's just, to me, it's a little like school. You find your friends, and that's your kind of group, and then you meet a million other people, and those become part of your network also. But I don't get too involved in the day trading and the gossip and all. I'm always the last to know everything, because I just think it's so unimportant. So to me, it's about finding your friends and stay out of the the Twitter fights and all that stuff, because that's not going to get you to where you need to get, which is to make good work and to get it out to the audience in the right way, So I think there's the good parts of the community and the parts that you just should stay away from.
And you do have another graphic novel that you were working on. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it comes out next October. We haven't announced it yet, but it's a big kind of intense look at fairy tales in a way people have never seen in a graphic novel. So I'm excited to release it.
Do you have any other projects that you're working on?
It's something totally different, but we'll see. There's no guarantee it'll work. So it's early days, so we'll see. But it's definitely not fairy tales.
Very intrigued, very intrigued. And you are new to the St. Louis area. This story it always just shocks me that you moved to St. Louis.
It's very weird, yeah.
How are you liking it? And B, what was it that brought you to this town?
I fell in love with a goat farmer, and so I moved here to St. Louis, and yeah, I'm adjusting little by little, getting used to it. I love the slower pace. I feel like it's better for my work and better for my brain and mental health and everything. And yeah, I think it's early days, so I don't know. But a few months in, I'm doing okay. So we'll see.
Well, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
And happy to have you on to have another conversation.
So much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you back. You get
it.
to be author number 2 to make a second appearance.
Sweet.
Maisie Eddings only beat you by like 3 days.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks again to Soman for squeezing me into his schedule to hang out and talk about books at our local bookstore. If you're interested in picking up any of his, those links are down below, as well as where to find him on social media and where you can find me on social media, and we can be book besties. We all need more book besties, so come hang out with me. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell so you get notifications whenever I post a new video, so you know when all the fun is happening. You want to do that. You should do that. And don't forget to share this with your friends. That is also important. To share. Sharing is caring, friends. Sharing is caring. Until next time, thanks for watching.